Okay, with us now to talk all things Fed is our good friend Thomas Hayes. Thomas is the founder, chairman, and managing member of Great Hill Capital. Thomas, always a pleasure. Welcome back.
Thanks for having me, Sean.
I kind of want to get right to it because what happened today, the Fed, what Powell said, was expected up until the point where he said, we don't expect our next move will be a rate hike. And that was certainly good news, welcomed by the markets. Talk more about this decision, what people did expect, and why it was just kind of that kind of day until Powell's comments.
Yeah, it was a big surprise in many regards. What people were worried about would be excessively hawkish talk, which they were kind of signaling coming into the blackout period a couple of weeks ago. So everyone thought there would be no cut, but very few people thought that he would effectively extinguish the idea of a hike, which he did. That was number one. The number two factor that was extremely important and has huge implications in the market is the runoff, or i.e., I like to call the taper of the taper. So they had been letting $95 billion a month of bonds roll off to reduce the balance sheet, $60 billion in treasuries and $35 billion in mortgage-backed securities. They are now going to reduce that by $35 billion, which means when $35 billion of treasuries mature, they're going to now reinvest those proceeds, which means that's additional liquidity in the market. Whereas before, other market participants had to pick up that slack. Now the Fed is going to be back in the market, which means there's a new bid for treasuries. And that's why you saw yields come in just a little bit. And that's why the market got a bit enthusiastic seeing that. At the most optimistic analysts had thought they might reduce it by 30. By going to 35, I think they were trying to send a message to the market saying, we understand how restrictive we've been. We still want to keep rates where they are, but we're gonna throw you a bone here and show you that we recognize the impact on mortgages and people's financing costs.
All right, Thomas, let's talk a bit more about how restrictive the Fed really has been, because at the start of the year, many people, from what I've read, 9 out of 10 analysts, experts in this field, thought there would be 3 rate cuts this year. Now, perhaps 1 in September or November. So what does this signal for the rest of 2024? What should we be looking for?
Well, the other surprise that we saw was he said a weakening in the labor market could warrant a cut. So if in fact we did see a weak jobs report sometime before September, it might bring cuts back on the table. But right now, if you look at the Fed funds futures, I just did before we got on, 54% chance of a cut in September, 67% chance of a cut in November, and an 81% chance of a cut in December. So I do think we're going to get 1, possibly 2, but that's going to depend on the labor market, and it's going to depend on inflation showing signs of stabilization, which Powell did imply that he could see it happening with owner's equivalent rent. A lot of us have been waiting for owner's equivalent rent to come down. It's been stubborn, but he's in our camp in that he thinks that's going to come down soon.
Okay, let's talk about why Americans are eager for this rate cut. Well, we heard about what John Terrett said. People trying to buy homes right now, very difficult, especially for young people perhaps out to try to purchase their first home. Plus, credit card debt is sky high right now, and it certainly has an effect, one would presume, on just the overall drag, the confidence that things are going to be okay and you can buy big ticket items.
Yeah, there's no question about it. Financing a car, financing a house, first-time home buyers, all these things have impact. But what you're going to now see, even though they haven't done cuts, with the Fed in the market again, reinvesting that $35 billion a month, I do think what we're going to see is bonds are going to stop going down. We know we've had a little bit of counter-trend move. Bonds have gone down recently. Yields have gone up. And I do believe mortgage rates are going to stop going up and may even start to come down now that the Fed is back in the market. So good news is on the way. Cuts might be a little bit further off, but we're going to watch the labor market. You pointed out the PMI was in contraction.
Right.
So there are some points of slowing that could give the Fed cover to maybe go a little earlier. But I think September is still on the table.
You know, we also heard Powell say that, look, he's going to make the cuts when it's appropriate. He's not going to put politics into this. And that's important because obviously September, just before the election. So let's talk about the importance of hitting that 2% target. Right now it's between 3 and 4, and it has been sluggish. It's been stuck there. It's been a long time since we had a reduction.
Yeah, there's no question. They have to continue to talk about 2% because they have to anchor inflation expectations. If people believe inflation is going to go back up, it affects their activity in the present, which means they buy more, which stokes more inflation. So they're going to continue to talk 2%. If we run at 2.7 on their preferred inflation gauge or 3%, it's not the end of the world. They're not going to necessarily hike, but it may delay them cutting. But if we do see some weakness, like you saw with the PMIs, and maybe we start to see some in labor, they could go sooner, and that'll be a positive thing. The sooner they go, the less they're going to have to do, Sean. That's the key message.
Yeah, Thomas, we don't have a lot of time, but I think it's kind of important to talk about the GOP frontrunner Donald Trump saying that if he's elected again, he's going to take a much more hands-on approach moving forward in the Fed. And that raises a lot of concerns for a lot of people. I'd like to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, the history of the Fed is that it's an independent body that controls the cost of money. I think that's a proven source of stability throughout the decades. I think that needs to continue to be in place. I think with any political election, the name of the game is you don't want one party to have all the power. So as long as there's some checks and balances, that is unlikely to happen. Irrespective of which party gains the executive branch.
Spoken like a true diplomat. Thomas Hayes, thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.